My name is Duane Larue, and this is my 15 minutes. As of today, the mental health field lacks, in my opinion, African American males and males in general. And with the lack of males brings the lack of mental health awareness for the male population. You know, who at times feel they don't need counseling. They don't need help with their mental health. They've dealt with their issues, but in reality, you haven't though. If you've seen your mom was verbally, mentally, physically abused, you carry those traits into your relationship, and you end up, victimizing women, and you pick up on so many traits as a male, and you're supposed to be the head of the household, but you can't lead a family if your mental health is not in check. And I know sometimes, I've dealt with it all these years, but you haven't. So all you're doing again, and biblically, you've always passing on this generational curse. So your kid to do it, the next kid to do it, and it's like a revolving door, and it'll keep cycling around. Before you know it, you live in 100 years of the same thing. So I think men are afraid to address mental health because it makes you cry. It has you got to disclose some things that you never wanted to disclose. You have to tap into some things that shouldn't have happened to you, that hurt you. But if you never tap into those things, you pass those things to your kids, and you pass those things into your relationships, to your marriage, and nobody lives this healthy life. So what you do is you traumatize the next person. I've done it myself in terms of not getting the adequate help I needed from an emotional standpoint. So growing up on the south side of Chicago, I remember vaguely a little bit, like being a little boy, having like birthday parties. Remember my mom not being there and things of that nature. But for the most part, it was different, challenging. I was lost for words at times. And it was kind of, it's like it was a jump from like maybe 8 to 14 is kind of when I remember and then starting to understand like, the meaning of my childhood. Day for me was, I got up in the morning, like I said, to make sure my brothers and sisters would, up dressed for school. Like I said, my mom wasn't there. And what's crazy now with all this DHR and DCFS, I don't know how, like, with, people, how they investigate things, how we were able to kind of get away with maybe, it was just God looking down, or I don't know. But I just remember me having to get up. I made sure they ate. And we all walked to school together a lot of days. But, I went to school. I used to get in trouble a lot. Like I was, because we got joked on for our mom, being on drugs. And at times it was tough because, you had to go home and you're home, you're dealing with it or not being there. Then you get to school, you're dealing with everybody joking on you. And then on top of that, she used to work at the school. So everybody knew she was a crackhead or on drugs or whatever. And, it stuck out with me and my brothers and sisters, But for me, I used jokes as a way to get by because everybody cracked jokes. So I was the kid that got in trouble for cracking jokes when somebody cracked a joke on me because their joke wasn't funny or whatever. But at school I used to get in trouble, and then I remember this guy by the name of Mr. Reeves. I went to his office, and he asked me a question. He said, man, this was like 14. He said, where you going? You're going to be the oldest 8th grader that I've ever had here. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, you're gonna fail, and you're gonna be in 8th grade again. And then like the light bulb, like from that day on, like the light bulb went off, like what went on or whatever. And I was able to, graduate. I started playing basketball, and it was just like life had started for me, and I kind of was able to, overshadow, a lot of the negativity that I had going on in terms of what was going on with my mom. Started going to the youth center, and and it just took off from there in terms of being able to go to the youth center. As a kid, I envisioned being a meteorologist. That is like so funny to me, like the weatherman. Like I envisioned being a meteorologist, but did it again. As I got older, I wanted to make sure that I understood the dynamic of like what my mom was going through in terms of addiction, what my father was going through in terms of, at times alcohol abuse. I feel, in terms of, why we couldn't get along sometimes as family members, or why we had this. It always bothered me. And as I took sociology in college, kind of just to go, because I didn't want to do plumbing. My father wanted to be a plumber. But as I got out and I started realizing I was working at a summer camp, which goes back to a guy by the name of Jerry Torrey, who, in my opinion, is a big part of the reason of who I've become today. And all right, so some things I admired about my dad was he was a man, meaning a man of the house, like an alpha male or whatever. And I admired that he worked a lot, as I got older, so I understand it now. But I appreciate the fact that, he made sure we had everything we needed. I appreciate the fact that he was there if I needed to talk, or, he made sure like we had, like, everything was built on family. And, I'll be forever grateful for that. Like I say, he took my brother in, and that wasn't biologically his son. He made sure we understood the value of love that was coming from a man. A lot of times, teenagers or family members usually don't get the love of a father, and he made sure we felt love, and he made sure we understood what love was about. And also, just like I said, his work ethic. His work ethic was crazy. In terms of how he worked all them hours, but still was able to cut grass, wash cars. He made sure everything was in place, and he made sure our family was intact. When things wasn't right, he stepped in and did the best he could. We always had Christmas. It wasn't nothing that we ever needed. We always wanted stuff, but who don't want things of that magnitude? But so I'll forever admire his work ethic and the man he stood for, and how he embodied the word family or whatever. So my mom, she wasn't there for us a lot of times, and it was difficult. Not having like a mother's love. And to this day, I still, struggle in a lot of areas from an emotional standpoint, and from a standpoint of not being able to go to her for advice, or and just seeing her on drugs and begging and stealing, and from the house. She did make sure we had food a lot of months. First of the month, the food stamp. Everybody remember the food stamp books, but we had food a lot of months. But sometimes we didn't have lights. Sometimes we went without. And my little brother dropped out of school, like 7th or 8th grade. I can't remember the grade, just because of he couldn't take the jokes, and his father was gone. He didn't have a father. But it was tough. But to get back to her, because we did a counseling session about 2-3 years ago, and I finally got a chance to ask her everything I wanted to ask her. And of course, you always ask why. And she just threw up the fact that there was so much pressure on her, without, her and my dad not making it, that she resulted in turning to drugs, and she never knew how to get back. To this day, she's still battling, drug addiction. For me, family is everything. My kids, who I actually moved away from Chicago to be a provider, for my kids. I always said that if I was alive and well, that I was going to do everything I can in my power to make sure that my kids were raised by their biological dad, regardless of the circumstances with my children's mothers or whatever the case may be, if we had those issues. But I was going to make sure. And so family structure is for me, is everybody eating at the dinner table, everybody going out, we having family reunions, house gatherings, doing things as a family to make sure that you create those memories, but also talking to my kids and developing those one-on-one relationships, because every kid is different and you got to treat every kid differently. But just showing them and teaching them, regardless of what your financial means are, regardless of where you at mentally or your mental status, regardless of what's going on, that family have to stick together. And I know sometimes the whole motto that, just because they're your family, they're not your family. But I don't want my family to have that, to carry that stigmatism with them. I want them to know that they're family and they got to love each other regardless of, the deficiencies, whether it's somebody, handicapped, whatever the case may be, whether it's, you got a brown-skinned kid, a light-skinned kid, a kid with dreads, a kid with braids, a kid that may be gay, a kid that's not gay. I don't care about none. I want all my kids to always accept each other. And I want them to carry those traits, if they decide to have kids or not have kids, but just carry the family trait with them, to love one another, to be there for one another, and to always remember that y'all may be the only ones that have each other's back, so why not? So tips that I'll have for anybody who's struggling with any type of mental health issues or post-traumatic stress is that you have to learn how to be comfortable, so to speak, with being uncomfortable. Because when you address these issues, it requires you to open up, to disclose, and to, look in the mirror, because you have to make some changes about yourself. So I think it requires the individual to, you got to, at some point, how you live in your life, it's not what this is supposed to be. People struggle from anxiety. People struggle from all types of different, issues. But you have to, stare these issues in the face. And that goes the same thing with obesity. That goes the same thing. People struggling with their weight, dieting, being diabetic, cancer. All these things factor into, if you understand that life isn't about you, it's about helping the next person. And then you have to help yourself to help somebody else. You have to love yourself to love somebody else. Then you will realize the importance of taking your mental health serious. And if you have teenagers, trust me, you really want to tap into what they have going on, because teenagers are using sex, drugs, all types of things as an outlet, because they can't talk to their parents, because their parents are too caught up in what they have going on, or their job, or getting their hair and nails done. Just it's so many things that parents are ignoring with these kids. But just for a daily walk with an individual who's tips on what you need to do, you need to get help. Just basically seek consultation, find ways to. And what's interesting is all jobs sometimes have where you get 4 or 5 free counseling sessions, just to give it a try. All you're doing is going to sit and talk to somebody about your lifestyle, or what you felt was traumatizing to you, or you got to do a genogram where you have to break down family generations to where you can see why your life went the way it went, or who was responsible for some of these things. Then you have to sit down and do it, but you have to seek consultation.